breaking news, and this has just come out over the last few minutes. We have to pivot this top of the show, what we're going to talk about here, because you love Jack Smith, and we know whenever there's Jack Smith news, you want to talk about it. And this is actually probably Jack Smith's final push right before Election Day, as early voting has rolled out in most of the country now, including here in the state of Tennessee, starting today. Will, what is this update? Because the headlines seem pretty aggressive.
That's right. So this is the government's response in opposition to the defendant's supplemental to his motion to dismiss on statutory grounds. So the Trump defense filed a motion to dismiss based off statutory grounds, especially in light of the Fisher decision out of the United States Supreme Court, which the ACLJ filed an amicus in. And it says he principally argues that the Supreme Court's decision in Fisher versus United States undermines counts 2 and 3 of the superseding indictment, which charged the defendant with conspiring, obstructing, and attempting to obstruct the congressional proceeding on January 6 in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2 and K. But then it
seems like when you continue to read that it's not just, okay, you could say, all right, this is someone who has a political agenda and they see what happened at the Capitol and they look at the Capitol and go, okay, well, maybe Trump riled people up, sent them into the Capitol. No, he said just the process of bringing people to Washington, D.C., having a protest or a rally or a demonstration was enough for him to take the blame.
That's right. And on page 4 of this brief, and remember that in the Fisher case, those similar counts were dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
No, because they're ridiculous.
And he was in the Capitol, that individual, and he got those dismissed, saying it was overly broad, it didn't apply. This statute out of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which came out of the Enron crisis, so that was primarily a financial crimes law that was put on the books. But this is what Jack Smith writes on page 4. Contrary to the defendant's claim that he bears no factual or legal responsibility for the events of January 6th, the superseding indictment plainly alleges that the defendant willfully caused his supporters to obstruct and attempt to obstruct the proceeding by summoning them to Washington, D.C., and directing them to march to the Capitol to pressure the vice president and legislators to reject the legitimate certificates and instead rely on fraudulent electoral certificates. The way I read this, Logan, is that this is Jack Smith's final moment to try and publicly say something to the detriment of Donald Trump before the election. And I'll even toss this to Rick here, is that, Rick, we've seen the way he's done things out of order. We've seen Ellie Honig on CNN actually blast him for being politically motivated in the way that Jack Smith has been rolling these things out before Election Day, out of practice with the Justice Department. And you see these motions as just another proof that the weaponization of the Justice Department against Donald Trump, everything that Donald Trump says.
You're trying not to say witch hunt. I can tell.
Right, I'm going there. But it's almost proof that what Donald Trump complains about is in reality happening, that this is a weaponized DOJ against him.
The one thing that I will say is that when you read this latest last breath attempt from Jack Smith to throw mud and politics into the presidential race, this clear election interfering, Jack Smith is just simply Adam Schiff with a beard. They are the same person. They are doing the same thing, which is all politics, all made up politics all of the time. And we've got to really push back. We can't have this election interfering. Jack Smith has had more cases thrown out over his career than he has finished. He has got a terrible track record of playing politics and getting overturned. And he's just grasping at straws, and it's very clear that he is a partisan here, just like Adam Schiff.
The problem with this is it seems like every single filing that Jack Smith puts out, whether it be his unprecedented evidentiary brief that he got out and then wanted the redactions out and those unredacted portions came out, is he's filing these almost as press releases before the election. He is trying to get as much information, as many statements out there that he can to try and influence the election. This is so much worse, I feel like, than what James Comey did to Hillary Clinton in 2016, by closing and reopening and doing a press conference and saying she did all these bad things, but we're not going to charge her, because these are in court, him trying to get a conviction that is unlikely will happen. But he is still going forward and putting these statements out as much as he can before Election Day to have as much negative press out there. And hopefully the liberal media will pick it up and run with it and broadcast it into every home in America, saying, look how bad it is. Trump summoned his people to Washington, D.C. to protest what he thought was election fraud. So it's just, once again, par for the course for Jack Smith. He loses these cases often. He almost has a perfect track record of getting these overturned on appeal. But he is doing everything he can to try and get negative press out there about Donald Trump leading up to November 5th. And that's what we're seeing here.